Okay, thank you. It's just very simple. If any of the speakers got any idea from their view the timing of the economic collapse and what kind of emergency legislation the government might bring in to bring in whatever they want to do as an excuse, whether that's civil contingencies or whatever. So that's it.
Thanks, James. Brian?
Okay, that's a difficult question. The whole time we've been looking at the financial situation and with people talking to us who are involved in the city. Mike Robinson's certainly been pretty accurate in what he's been talking about with financial matters. The people are all saying you can't predict it, but they know it's getting closer. I know that's quite a political answer, but that's the truth. They're all saying it's coming, it's obvious it's coming. Maybe one of the best measures was that somebody said it's very interesting that if you go back a year ago, nobody in the city was talking about it. So if you went in the coffee houses and the pubs at lunchtime, nobody was talking about it, but they knew it was there. And now they are talking about it and they are saying we don't know when it's going to come. But my feeling is you can smell it's getting closer. And to answer the second bit is I think they are going to engineer trouble on the streets, and that's to trigger the Civil Contingencies Act. And we are seeing some very, very interesting information coming out of South Wales, which is to do with network groups, web-based network groups, who are actually talking about the revolution starting in the countryside, the trouble starting, not in the cities, but in the country.
I just want to add to that. Ian, you might be able to expand on this, but I think if there's going to be a major crisis that will cause a financial collapse, as it were, I think on a global scale, it will be connected with the energy industry in some form, and that could be in relation to a conflict, not just Iran, but any kind of energy crisis or crisis in the market, perhaps. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you can agree with me on that.
No, absolutely. I mean, obviously, if there's any kind of shortage or cut in supply, I mean, the irony is, I don't want to go off track here, but the irony is, of course, we don't need hydrocarbons anyway. But the industry can produce 90 million barrels a day. They have to sell 90 million barrels a day. And the reason that governments want to keep people buying is because the taxes on hydrocarbons is the most efficient way of fleecing you of your hard-earned income after income tax. Next question. Nick, sorry, I'll give this gentleman the microphone here.
Thanks, Ian. Thank you. It's a question for everyone, really. I'm not sure who to choose to ask, but I was just curious to know what you think. Do you think it's the financial crash, which seems sort of quite looming? Do you think it's a controlled crash to shut up the awakening people, to have us queuing for bed and shut us up? Or do you think it's the greedy, psychotic megalomaniacs without vision and wisdom, just consumed by their insatiable lust for control? Or do you think it's a bit of both? I think it's a bit of both.
I thought I'd tell you what I think.
Patrick?
I think you're along the right lines there. Anytime there's going to be a major shift in society, it's usually prompted by a crisis. It's an excuse. Never let a good crisis go to waste, as our great leaders have told us time and time again. So definitely the two go hand in hand. I think there's a lot of things emerging right now. There's a lot of knowledge emerging specifically in the field of technology and quantum physics. I don't want to sound too new agey or whatever, but this is truth. Everything, a lot of Einstein and Maxwell's maxims are being thrown out the window by the day. Okay, and there's a lot of things going on in that realm that will have a profound effect on industry, on culture, on business, on society eventually, because those are the building blocks of our reality, in three-dimensional reality.
I think, as well, to add to that, it would be astute to have a stock of food and water in your house right now. And we're entering the winter months, so it's not appropriate to necessarily be talking about growing your own food. Although, if you have the capacity to do that, and you're not, then I would encourage you to do so, or thinking about what you could do next year, assuming that they put the collapse off. I mean, I was expecting the collapse to come about at the end of September, and it should have come about. But of course, what happened with the Federal Reserve, European Central Bank, and the Bank of England all basically said, no, we're just going to continue to throw money into the economy. So that's the quantitative easing, or this time it's quantitative easing unlimited. It's not QE3. I mean, the US, the Federal Reserve, they're pumping 40 billion into the economy every month. So you know, right now, I mean, I've got to tell you, the only thing you should have in the bank right now is an overdraft. I mean, if you've got anything in the bank, whatever you've got in the bank, then start getting ready to say goodbye to it. And personally, I think it's a lot easier to say goodbye to an overdraft than it is to assets. You know, whatever you've got in liquid assets, I mean, just take a look at the precious metals markets. I mean, take a look at gold and silver. I mean, you know, Max Kaiser will tell you that you know, silver is the way forward. You know, one of the issues with silver is that JP Morgan are believed to have oversold their silver holding by as much as 100 to 1. And if that is the case, and of course JP Morgan recently got a ruling from the US High Court that no, they hadn't, but basically that was just paid on a ruling made without actually doing any kind of audit. But if JP Morgan have oversold their silver holding, not even by 100 to 1, but by 50 to 1, then you can expect to see the price of silver absolutely rocket. I mean, right now, silver's at about, I think, about $36 for an ounce. $34 an ounce, which is what, about 22 pounds, give or take. So, you know, if you got, every time you've got a spare 20 quid, the smart thing to do would be to go buy a 1 ounce coin, in a silver 1 ounce coin. You know, silver since 2005 has increased by 550%. You know, gold by 350%. But silver has potentially more upside than gold, but of course, actually, you potentially need a big storage area, so you might want to look at both. But the bottom line is, you know, I think it was Alessio Rastani in his seminal interview with the BBC, you know, which he recorded 14 months ago now, when he said, you know, in 12 months, the savings of millions of people will evaporate. Well, he was absolutely spot on, because people who have retired in the last 12 months have seen the value of their pension pots evaporate by as much as 35%. So the bottom line is, again, to quote Alessio, what's going on right now is like a cancer in the economy. And you either do something about it, or you pretty much know what the prognosis is going to be. So you know, it really is time to just sort of protect your own well-being. So that's food and water are absolutely the primary assets, of course, along with shelter, but we'd assume that's taken care of. But food and water, and my recommendation is that the smart thing to do would be to have, especially in the city, you know, have at least 3 months' food stocked for every member of the household. You know, and get a water filter. I mean, a Berkey water filter, they're about £300, but you know, each of those filters has got a life of about 11,000 gallons, and they don't need any electricity or anything to power them. So you know, these are the sort of things, contingency things, because if you are chasing food and water, you're not going to be effective doing anything else, because that's, you know, Patrick says they'll just lock you down by making sure that you've got to spend every waking hour foraging for food. Was it dumpster diving? So you know, you can either start to make some contingency or get out and practice your dumpster diving.
It's very trendy right now.
Ken,
as you rightly pointed out, in answer to your question as well, these powers that be plan things out way, way, way in advance, hundreds of years or even more than that. So the one thing is for sure, all fiat currencies go the same way as every empire. It's a matter of when, not if. They knew from the start that, of course, that this would crash. Now, the real question is this of their timing, or are we creating the timing, or is it both? And I do agree with you. I think it's both. And this is one of the basic strategies in martial arts, is when you're fighting an overwhelmingly powerful opponent, you have to use their momentum against them. So let them go. For me, I love this, the financial crisis. Fantastic. the sooner the better, because actually it's the comfort level of the West that has allowed us to be apathetic to the point that we've allowed people to be murdered in mass. It's the comfort level. So as it gets more uncomfortable, people start to see the truth much more clearly. It's amazing how that works. So I think this is the greatest opportunity ever. I'm embracing it wholeheartedly, and I think, whatever it is that they might have had planned, we can use their plan to our advantage, not theirs.
Ben?
Well, I think December 14th, is it, Brian? The army gets disbanded from this country, basically, until 7th of January.
Yeah. They're on leave, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. You're disbanding the army. Hello, something's going on, right? Yeah, so I'm out of the country. I've been invited to Iceland, so I'm leaving. As for what they're trying to do is, well, they're going to collapse the economies of the world one by one to bring in their world government. That's as simple as that, isn't it? If you've got currencies and stuff going on, you need to collapse them, bring in your own currency and your own hitmen to do all that kind of stuff. So I think actually what's going on with the economics of it is very simple. They're going to collapse and then rebuild, collapse and rebuild, collapse and rebuild, like they did in World War II. They collapsed everything and then they rebuilt it. And then we had the UN and we had all this, what we have now. So I think it's very predictable that it's going to happen, and it is happening. Look, if you lived in Spain, Italy, Ireland, it's all very different. If you live in Greece, there is no more pharmaceuticals in the hospitals. And then when they first did it, you had to pay €5 to even get into the hospital, and of course the banks are closed and no one had any money. Right? Imagine that, trying to get your relative's medication and not having the €5. €5, when 2 weeks ago, €5 would have been nothing. It would have been drink down the pub, if that, right? So it's predictable and it's going to happen. When is it going to happen? Whenever I suppose they're ready. But the point is, the more people wake up, the more it's going to get pushed back. And of course, we're there fighting it every step of the way because we've all got something to do and something to contribute.
But they've still got China and Russia. They still can't implement a world order on this financial system while there's people outside of it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's probably why.
They can't do it. They can only do it in certain areas here and there. In the United States, Britain, and Western Europe.
But this is why we talk about them being psychopaths, because psychopaths ultimately will push the button and say, right, World War III, right, and then we'll see where we end up after, right? That's a possibility.
Population reduction at the same time.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, World War One. What was World War One? Yeah.
Okay, next question. Nick?
Very quickly.
Can you take the microphone? Wait for the microphone.
Sorry. Just to add to the idea of storing food, you can also do many other things to get a larger diet. You can get one of these air dryers that dries apples, even meats, even fish, whatever, and you can pickle stuff, which I gather before we all had fridges, what the ancients would do is pickle things forever, and pickling stuff makes it antiseptic, and so when you have medical problems and doctors are not going to come round, one of the greatest things like honey is antiseptic. Mm-hmm. So you should store drying food and then putting it in these vacuum-sealed bags will greatly increase the potential things that you could have. And as I said, pickling, so you should look at the varieties of options.
Have you actually thought of running a workshop on this? Because I'm a complete ignoramus when it comes to that, and so I have to tell you that most of my stock of food is in cans. I know, but needs must. But hey, listen, that's exactly the type of workshop that I would go and attend.
I run a B&B in Hastings. It's one of the best in the country, and it's also getting awards for lots of things. I'm probably one of the only ones that's ever advertised in the UK column, and I've had people calling me and said, I saw your really nice hotel in this really weird publication, which sounds like a nuts conspiracy.
Well, maybe what we should talk afterwards, and maybe actually sort of build on that particular skill, because that is an incredibly valuable skill.
Can I just make a suggestion? I'm all for pickling, and I think we should start off by pickling David Cameron.
Absolutely. Let's speak afterwards. Nick, right at the very back.
Thank you for the microphone. In light of what you've been talking about with the Rothschild's grip on the money system, I don't believe that countries like China, North Korea, and even Russia would just yield like that. So is it possible that we're going to see a third world war? And if so, I mean, this country is disarmed. There's no army, there's no Royal Air Force, and there's no proper navy, no aircraft carriers, no air arm. So, I mean, unless they know something that we don't for making the country so weak, what are they going to do in light of that? Because at the ending of the day, they want to have this like a one world global currency. I don't believe China, with its industrial military complex, is just going to go along just like that. So ultimately, and you know, what's his name? Albert Pike, in his allegedly talked about 3 world wars. I'm not sure if that's true, but it does seem that we could be heading for war.
Okay, thank you, Brian. I think you're going to respond.
Why do I always get the cheerful subjects to deal with?
Well, you're the ex-naval guy.
Yeah, I'm thinking very hard on this one. Obviously, your analysis, everything's been taken away from us. So Britain is going to be nothing in this. There's no doubt about that. America is so significant because the American military are just so powerful. The moment you start moving American battle groups, their aircraft carrier groups around the ocean, you are moving forces which most people can't imagine what those things are capable of. I did look at this with interest, actually, because I also think that if you watch Putin at the moment, it's very interesting what he's saying. You sense that he's unhappy. You sense that he is beginning to watch what the Western corporatist agenda has done to his country. And I think that's why we're seeing these media attacks on Putin. So was it Cameron a few months ago was sort of chastising Putin for running corrupt elections? Well, pot, kettle and all that. So I think that Putin is a very canny man. I don't think he's a good man in the true sense of the word, but I think that he is watching what's going on in the world. I also believe that if the West could do it, they would murder him. China, of course, nobody really knows what goes on inside China, except that we're constantly being told that China's now a democracy, which is absolutely untrue. So China is a machine. I'm just going to switch because this is to do with ideas. I walked along the seafront in Plymouth with a guy about 5 or 6 years ago, and probably it was about 6 years ago now, and I said to him, basically, I'm looking at the Nazi Party at work in Plymouth. That was a crude analogy, a common purpose. And he began to tell me things, and one of the things he said is that the European Union would break up and it would revert to being 10 major states and the power would be concentrated on the Mediterranean. He said that Britain would be stripped, and eventually when we as a nation were an empty shell, we'd be kicked to one side. And I think we're watching that happen at the moment. And then he said to me, well, of course, you know what's going to happen next. He said the kings of the north are going to attack in the Middle East. And I said to him, well, who are the kings of the north? And he said, well, it's biblical, but just look at the map and you'll find that Moscow is directly north of Tel Aviv. And the other bit, he said, eventually, of course, they will be joined by the army of 200 million. Now, what I'm talking about here is biblical prophecy, but it's quite interesting that what the Bible is saying is that there is going to be a massive attack unleashed on the Middle East. Having spent a bit of time in the military, if you talk about world wars now, what are you really talking about? Do you believe that you're going to see nuclear missiles flying all over the world? I don't think so. What you're more likely to see is something used tactically and locally. I believe that we are heading towards major violence in the Middle East, but it's going to come out of the blue. And I think it will ultimately be China and Russia, who are allies, are going to say we've had enough of what's going on, and they're going to move. But of course, they're not moving because they are doing out of the goodness of their heart. They're going to do it in order to protect their own agendas. So my prediction is that Israel is going to continue doing what they're doing, and in the eyes of Russia and China, they are central to running the whole of the regime which Ian has taken us through. But there is going to be a backlash, and that's what's going to happen. You might like to check it, but I think I'm correct in saying that somebody has put millions and millions of pounds into resurfacing the old Silk Roads. And you say, why do you need new tarmac on the Silk Roads? And the answer is that if you want to move armies of millions of men, you're going to do it over land. You can't do it by sea or airlift. So why are those Silk Roads being refurbished? So I think at some stage we are going to see major violence in the Middle East. Is that a prophecy, or is that the plan of the other side? I personally believe it's prophecy, but you can challenge me on that.
Ken, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, well, I think I agree with you, basically. That's part of the plan. But for me, the question is whether or not what we have is really interesting with regard to the wanted attack on Iran. You have the intelligence agencies and the militaries of both the United States and Israel both saying at top levels, this is mad, this is nuts. That's, I think, very, very important to recognize that. I mean, come on, these institutions are part and parcel with the whole power structure. I mean, they do exactly what they're told to do. And for high-level people in Mossad, and in the U.S. military and Pentagon saying that, it tells me, it's what I said earlier. There are some, and to understand it on a human level, not all these people are compromised pedophiles, totally corrupt. I mean, in America in particular, it's really embarrassing. It's part of what I say every chance I get, is how embarrassing it must be for any red-blooded American to realize that you are Israel's bitch, quite frankly. Its prime minister comes to the Congress, and you have 29 standing ovations for this psychopath. And your Congress is bought and paid for by a foreign nation. I know there's layers behind that, but the point is, a lot of Americans are really, and some that aren't compromised in high positions of power in the Pentagon and whatnot, I think are definitely not down with the program at all. And if they want to flip the switch and give the order, in a way, I kind of want them to do it, because I reckon, here we go. This is the big show. And if they have top-level defections in key places, people in the know, that's the first domino. And if that happens, like I said, good luck to you. If you're hanging from a lamppost, you might want to consider yourself lucky. Because once the truth really comes out about what's really going on and what kind of corruption and what kind of violence and what kind of nastiness has been perpetrated against all the people of the world, whoa. And I think that's the question. Do enough people know? Is the consciousness high enough to prevent this? I think, yeah, it's a race, really. It's a race, in my opinion. I agree with you. That's what they want to do. They want a third world war. For them, it's solved so many problems. It's the whole thing, chaos, order out of chaos. It's the whole cycle over and over. Of course they want a third world war. I'm hoping they just don't have, and they know this. That's why they haven't been able to do Iran. They know they've got real problems. But as you pointed out as well in your thing, they're getting more desperate as time goes on. They realize that they can't sustain the level of increased knowledge. They can't maintain the grip on power they've got. It's a race against time for them. So what do? They need a third world war. They absolutely need it. But if it goes wrong, well, good luck to you.
Toast.
Just quickly to add something, there's a document from NASA. And just to give you a clue as to how these people think, that this document from NASA was a PowerPoint presentation, I think in 2001. And it kind of starts off by saying, the crew of Spaceship Earth are running amok, right? I guess that's us, right? They have no idea what they're doing with the controls of the spaceship, because we're hurtling through space. They're ruining the biosphere. We're basically, ruining our planet, and we don't know what we're doing. And the captain is non-existent, and the head crew don't know what they're doing, and they're running around like headless chickens. And this is from NASA. This is exactly how they think. So what they think is, actually, if we were in control of the planet, it would be a lot different. And obviously, that's when you get the Georgia Guidestones with the 500 million or whatever it is left on the planet, etc., etc. But that's just a clue. And I'm going to do a presentation, I think, at some point about that NASA document, because it's very interesting to give you a clue into how these people are thinking, which I think is important.
Thanks. Okay, we'll take another question. Nick, the lady in front of you here.
I was going to ask you, Ken, you almost pointed out that some of the people at the top, I don't know if I got it wrong, aren't human?
Well, for me, it's the one thing that is for sure is that when we think we know something absolutely 100%, generally we're wrong. For us to think that there couldn't be non-humans, otherworldly beings at play, is ridiculous. Of course it could. Why isn't that possible? I'm not saying that it is, but I see there's huge amounts of empirical evidence. I mean, I think it's ridiculous to even enter into a debate as to whether or not there are otherworldly beings. I mean, just mathematically alone, it's ridiculous. Are you kidding
you think
me?
they're going to be, there's more of a threat from the ETs than there is that they're being pressurised? Because I know there's a war going on up there. I've seen from my eyes things fighting, shooting at each other. And isn't that where all the money's going and why the forces are being cut down on Earth? Because there's a lot of fighting in the stratosphere.
Well, I think, of course, it's conjecture. I'm only giving my opinion of what I think is happening, but I think there are definitely malevolent and benevolent forces at play. I definitely think it's a dangerous idea to think that anyone's going to come and be the savior. So anyone who endorses the idea that we're going to enter into a new consciousness and maybe otherworldly beings are going to come into the rescue, that's extremely...
No, not like that, but I understand that it's very sought after, and there is a constant battle up there, and whether maybe all this nuclear stuff and all this stuff that they're sick to death is upsetting their environment where they're living. They're constantly coming down. They had a pact with President Eisenhower years ago, didn't they? That we won't leave your skies if you're going to carry on with this nuclear weaponry, and they can destabilise nuclear missiles. So maybe the people that are in power, these so-called people in power, or this global elite, maybe they're having something else to worry about at the moment. That's why they're letting all the banks go and everything. Maybe there's a bigger picture here that this kind of thing is being kept at bay. To keep us busy, so we don't notice the real picture, because there's some pretty busyness going on out there at the moment.
Yeah, again, I would just repeat that with what we know and what we don't know, what is most important to realize is that there is no savior but ourselves, and unless we're willing to actually affect the change we wish to see in the world, I don't see anybody come to the rescue. So whether there are forces much more powerful than we as earthly human beings at bay, at work, and they're ultimately kind of deciding what's going to happen, yay or nay, I don't buy it. I don't believe in that at all. Sorry?
They're shooting down the very humanoids that are trying to help us.
Yeah, well, okay. I'm not...
The bad ones, we're just shooting them all of them, so we're not very popular out there.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider us very popular. Actually, you know what? I can't. This subject broaches on something to me that I didn't plan to say, but I'm going to say it. The idea that we are entering into a new consciousness is I think really defied by one important fact, and it's a subject that's the most taboo subject of all, and I'm really going to throw you for a loop probably by bringing it up. And it's a good way to make enemies as well, even talking about this subject, because people get so defensive about it. But I've been vegetarian for 20 years, and my reason for this is that I don't want to perpetuate or support the suffering of other creatures. I just don't want to do it. To whatever level I can, I want to decrease my negative impact on not just humans. For me, the only reason why I'm involved in human rights is because we can't even get this yet. Jesus Christ, we've got to realize that respect for each other as brothers and sisters in one human family is essential. We don't even get that, much less the idea that we should actually give the same kind of consideration to those who are defenseless and ultimately are being used by us. What we are doing to non-humans on a karmic level, if there is such a thing, is so insane. It's impossible to even think to measure what we are doing every single day just by what we put on our plate. It's amazing. And yet most people again, if I were to talk about this and go into even more depth, I would offend probably most of you badly, and you'd hate me. But it's the truth, and I think it's one of the things that we need to discuss. We're destroying our planet morally, spiritually. How do you spiritually evolve when you're doing this to other creatures? If another being or another species from another part of the universe came here and did to us what we're doing to others, then we'd understand real quick why what we're doing is completely insane and nuts, and yet we don't even really talk about it. Anyway, I didn't plan on that, but...
Nicola? Gentleman? Okay, take one at the back and then the gentleman at the front here.
Wonderful day. Thank you very much, gentlemen. It's been absolutely great. My question is, or observation first of all, is that I think the vast majority of us are here today by virtue of the internet. It's very, very important for the alternative news and points of view. Could I ask the panel then, please? We've talked briefly today about the closing down of the internet, the censoring. Thank you very much. The censoring of the internet today. Do you think it's going to be shut down totally, or are we still going to be able to play our silly little games on Facebook, or is it just going to hit this sort of movement?
The answer to the back end of that question is yes, you will still be allowed to play your silly little games on Facebook, but you won't be allowed to play any serious games on Facebook. So I think the establishment would like to regulate usage of the internet to eliminate anonymity, eliminate handles as a slang for nicknames registered. So you effectively have to have a license to surf. Okay, it might be free at the beginning and it might cost money down the road, but it'll basically be if you don't have your registration in order, i.e. your passport, driving license, that is my name, that's my user, and my email and my mobile phone all sync up, you will not be allowed to have access or log on. So this is a very real possibility if you look at the consolidation of users within 3 or 4 major groups online. I'm talking about Google, I'm talking about social networks like Facebook and Twitter, who might own each other within 2 years. And also I'm talking about mobile phone operators also linked in to these same companies. So that will be something that I think could happen sooner than later. Because the biggest fear is since the invention of the printing press, the establishment has been able to control the whole of the media from A to Z, major newspapers, networks. It's only within the last 10 to 15 years that they've had to deal with this monstrosity, which many in the elite call a vulgar network. That's vulgar for them. It's dirty, okay? They would like to either regulate it, shut it down, and also make as much money as they can off of it. But it's not going to... It could, in theory, be shut down, but I think it's more likely that they will want to regulate the usage of the net. So if you're not kosher, you can't get online to do what you want to do in that big, massive community where all your friends are. You'll be a pariah, as it were.
Okay, we'll take Nick, and I think we're sort of coming into the last question. So we'll take 1, 2. You've already had a question. So 1, 2, and then 3. So we'll finish with Masoon.
First, I'd like to thank you, Ian, and everybody for an excellent day. My question is concerning the Olympics. We were told, that there was possibly going to be a major catastrophe in London. Well, personally, I believe they did have something planned, but I was wondering whether you would consider they were put off because it went viral on the internet. Everybody was talking about it. Although myself, I had some doubts while they would have a major event near the headquarters, which is the City of London. I don't know if you'd like to comment on that.
Okay, the thing about talking about the potential for something happening at the Olympics for 5 years was to try and make sure nothing happened. So, I consider the fact that, in the scheme of things, we got a result. It was impossible for them to do it. because we'd had so much coverage in the mainstream, one way or another. Private Eye ran an article on a forced flag event at the London Olympics and had 2 cartoons on it before the Olympics. So, I mean, it was made impossible. Michael Shrimpton, who is a rather too well-connected QC, told myself and Tony Farrell, when he was meeting with us at Tony's employment appeal hearing, he told us without any prompting whatsoever, we weren't even talking about that subject, and he said, are you guys aware that MI5 have stopped Mossad bringing a dirty nuke into the country, which they were planning to set off at the Olympics? Now, that's from Michael Shrimpton. So, I think that there was something being planned.
Do you think they had the second best was to discredit the conspiracy?
Oh, well, there's a possibility, but, the bottom line is that the irony is that most of the brickbats come from within the alternative community. And I simply make the observation, I said, look, the bottom line is, I'm an analyst, not a prophet, and the purpose of the analyst is to try and actually prevent stuff from occurring. I have the track record. What the presentation I gave in Chicago in June of 2006, where I put forward the proposition that the same forces that had dropped the Twin Towers on 9/11 were about to do something similar with Sears Tower. And, we got it out on the mainstream news in Chicago and nothing happened. Now, if you Google Sears Tower terror attack, you'll find that on June the 22nd, 2006, a terror cell was arrested. Of course, it was a patsy terror cell. A patsy terror cell was arrested in Miami, Florida, with detailed plans of Sears Tower. And those people are still in jail to this day. So, the bottom line is the role of the analyst is to try and preempt. And it's a bit like, Ken was saying, we have to get inside their heads. And I regret to say that I actually find that quite easy, having worked inside the belly of the beast. Guess who Jacob de Ross clone is if you read Uncensored magazine? We've got to get inside their heads and actually think the way they think, and that's what enables us to preempt their atrocity. It's a bit like, playing chess. If you're playing a grandmaster, you've got to know the way the grandmaster plays. You've got to know his strategies. You've got to know the perverse methodologies that he will adopt to maintain his supremacy. But these guys are very, very good at what they do. But because some of us have been watching this stuff for 20 years, and the bottom line is, when I was researching 9/11, in the immediate aftermath of 9/11, there was probably a handful of people on the planet. Now, the job is easy, or easier. Because we have thousands, if not millions of people actually looking at this stuff. And the more of us that hypothesize on what it is that they're going to do, so we're wrong more often. We're wrong in terms of the eyes of those who think that we're trying to predict something. No, we're not. We're trying to prevent things from occurring.
There was proof that there was something going to happen, because when they had the newspaper scene with all the newspaper headlines, do you remember when they all had clothes made out of newspapers? There was a big bit that said to be or not to be.
Oh, listen, the opening and the closing ceremonies were absolutely loaded with low magic. These guys like to create the impression that they know something we don't. That's why they have the separated capstone, the knowledge and the wisdom of the few, never to be shared with the masses. But they are resorting to low magic. They're more. Let me tell you, they are more concerned about humanity actually waking up to the full capability and capacity and potential that we possess, and actually starting to come together and bring that to bear.
How that bit was covered up at the end, wasn't it? It went not to be. I noticed that filming on that. It was to be or not to be.
Well, we could spend a whole evening talking about the opening and closing ceremonies. Okay, what was the next question?
I just wanted to say something.
No, it's questions, not statements. It's questions.
I've got a question.
Well, then we're going to the back of the room for the two ladies at the back, and that'll be it.
Do you have a message for people that would love to be here that don't have 35 quid to get in?
I'm
one of those. I was invited here and paid by friends, so I have a friend that would love to be here.
Okay, ultimately, we have an event here in central London. We have people from Wales, we have people from the East Coast line from York. We have people from the southwest, from Sussex. So holding an event in central London, I mean, there's inevitably costs that have to be borne. I mean, I wouldn't, I'm sure that some of the videos that will be available from this event, will end up on YouTube. But, that's just one medium. I mean, the important medium is how we share this. Literally, if everybody gets out there and develops their own local grassroots network, every person that you're able to share information with or exchange ideas with, they will then go and share it with others. This is not about media. When the BBC approach us, they're only approaching us for one reason, and that's because they think they found a way to ridicule us. That's why I certainly would never participate in anything to do with the mainstream media. So it's more important that we get out there and talk. But I mean, I'm sure that this information will find its way out there on YouTube one way or another. Can we go to the two questions at the back? We've got to do two at the back, and then I think we have to call it a day.
Do you think that 2012 has been a flop from the point of view of the people who planned it possibly eons ago? And would you, like me, be relieved that 2013 is nearly on us, that we're still here, we've got work to do, we can carry on progressing at a normal pace and not have stupid psyops hanging over us?
I think that's a great observation. I mean, let me tell you, I'm absolutely convinced there's going to be a hell of a lot of people who wake up on December 22nd, open their eyes, and when they realise nothing's changed, they're just going to drop dead. Because they've got such an existential attachment to something mega happening that when it doesn't, they're going to lose the will to live. Yeah, so I think, Belinda, in many respects, you're absolutely right. I think, that once December 21st is done and dusted, I mean, I think this period is absolutely seminal in our evolutionary process. But to focus on a particular date is naive. This is a long game. I think we're actually well through the turning point right now anyway, but it's a long game. But I think we're also going to see it accelerate at a phenomenal rate of knots. I think it was Patrick, you put up a slide about one of the prophecies where things would accelerate at such a rate that people wouldn't be able to absorb it. I think we're pretty much in that situation right now. So yeah, I think it's an excellent point you make. Anybody want to?
Just a little one. It's been obvious to me the last 6 months, even a step change in people seeing things, people starting to do things instead of just sit there, rabbit in the headlights. 2013, I think, is going to be really interesting. But can I be naughty? Just jump back on the subject to the other side. Fascinating that Paul Dacre, editor of the Mail, did what he did. If you analyse, that man ripped apart the heart of the organisation. And I think he did it because in his head, he's begun to see something. And I think we haven't heard anything since because they've now started to put the pressure on. But I think we're seeing people in the establishment beginning to think for themselves. Even people in the BBC. I know it's amazing.
Yeah, just quickly, I think it's like a JFK kind of moment, where JFK was a servant to the rich all his life. He came from a servant family, there's nothing to indicate that he was a really virtuous man all along. He was in that position, as all presidents are, to follow orders, read the teleprompter in these days, and so on and so forth. But the Cuban Missile Crisis, I believe, had some real impact on him. He realized, I think, that's my guess, but that he was being used in a way that could end all life on planet Earth as we know it. And that changed him. Obviously, the policies that he was getting ready to carry out were a death knell for the bankers and whatnot, and he got taken out. I think that same thing is happening with a lot of people in high levels right now. They're realizing that they're being used and that this could result not in the enemy being destroyed, but all life being destroyed, including your own children and whatnot. And that's extremely powerful. I think hopefully it's going fast enough to do the trick.
Okay, Maysoon.
Hello. Before I ask my question, I'd like to thank each of you. I want to thank Brian. I'd like to thank Brian for defending the rights of children, which I think is very important. Me as a parent, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I want to thank Ken especially because as a Palestinian, I respect every single thing that he's done for my people, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. To thank the rest of the panel for trying to share what we see as the ultimate truth, which is threatening our planet. But what I want to ask you, I'm a cynic, I'm a bit of a pessimist, unfortunately. I don't see the United States as a threat to the world. I actually see Israel as a threat to the world. It is Israel that has the power. It is Israel that is occupying the United States government. It is Israel that is occupying the governments of the UK and Europe. And one of you just said earlier on that you don't envisage them using nuclear bombs. I don't share that view. Jim Fetzer, who's an American political analyst, he actually stated recently that Israel actually did use mini nukes in Iraq. And I believe that they are using mini nukes in the Middle East. And what I am very upset about is that they are turning my Middle East into a living cemetery, which is full of dead, dying, cancer patients, paraplegics, and maimed people. So I disagree. I think Israel is the hub. Israel is the power. Israel has this temple that the Rothschilds are building in Tel Aviv, and it is these people who are controlling the planet because they are the financiers. And I seriously believe that Israel would not think twice about using nukes. Thank you.
They actually believe in the Samson object. Samson brought the temple down on top of himself and killed everybody. That's what they believe. They'd rather take us all down with all the nuclear submarines supplied by West Germany to target all our cities and everybody rather than them being destroyed.
Thank you, Ken.
You know, I didn't talk about it, but I think supremacism in any shape or form is cancerous, toxic, unacceptable to the nth degree. And, American supremacism, in my opinion, is what explains how America has basically raped and pillaged for many decades. The false belief that we come from the greatest country in the world, freedom and democracy, we're really, we're not perfect, but we're better than everyone else. That's what basically was this mindset that allowed us to do this. Supremacism, it's a form of supremacism. Jewish supremacism, I have to agree, is the most dangerous, toxic, cancerous thing that we're facing right now. And it doesn't mean that other forms of supremacism are any more acceptable. It just means that supremacist ideology combined with that kind of power is incredibly unacceptable. Unacceptable. And it's part of why I get hit a lot as well, because I'm not going to do the PC thing and say Zionist, Zionist. No, I'm sorry. The Jewish people, whether you like it or not, have an obligation to make clear that that state called Israel, that Jewish state of Israel, does not reflect you at all. At all. And if you don't do that, then you are being, by default, you are also responsible for allowing that nation to get away with what it's getting away with. And when we talk about the Samson option, if you don't know what the Samson option is, go Google it. There's no need for me to explain it. It is that dangerous. I don't necessarily share your pessimism, though. At the same time, I don't underestimate the possibility of the end of the world as we know it. I agree with you there.
By the way, in 2009, I believe it was, the British Jewish community took out full-page advertisements in every one of the broadsheets and stated categorically, and there was a number of them that actually put their names to it, and they stated categorically that they did not support the genocidal Zionist agenda of the Israeli government. And basically they stated that they refused to continue to tolerate the labelling of being called self-hating Jews because they questioned the Zionist government of Israel's agenda. So, it is fair to say, and of course we're seeing it in Israel right now. And this is, I think, one of the reasons that the Israeli government is being advised by its senior military personnel and Mossad personnel that, to launch a mission into Iran might not be the smartest move right now, because, the people in Israel, the Jewish community in Israel, are protesting, they're hitting the streets and letting it be known that they do not support the hawkish agenda. So, it's starting. Go on.
I'm definitely inspired, and I admire the courage of those in Israel that are doing this. But sadly, the vast majority have supported this latest slaughter. They supported Operation Cast Lead. They're so indoctrinated. They know not what they do, in my opinion. These people are mind controlled. They don't even realize how they're being manipulated. And this is what's really important, I think, to realize as well, is that Israel itself doesn't have power. I would totally disagree with that. It's the power behind Israel.
Absolutely.
And they don't care about nationality. They'll sacrifice the state of Israel, the Jews in Israel, no problem. They're doing it to America. For me, it's absolutely indisputable. It's a matter of time. The global currency will not be the dollar that much longer. And when that happens, I believe the American people, like sheep being led to slaughter, are going to experience what it is to live in a so-called third world nation instantaneously. They're going to sacrifice the American people. They can sacrifice the Israelis because they don't care. They don't have any allegiance to any of these nationalities or religions for that matter.
Yep.
Just watching the time of it.
Yeah, go on. You going to make a comment, Patrick? The last comment.
No,
Okay.
a comment. Yeah.
All right, 30 seconds from each of the speakers.
Okay, I'm just going to say it's. Let's keep it on a plane. We're coming up to Christmas. First thing for me is, if you want to know what we're fighting, it's evil. And I've come to the conclusion, the absolute conclusion, that evil is real. It's a power. It gets into people. Are we dealing with different beings? I don't know. But I've seen people, I've met them, I've dealt with them, and I look at them, and there isn't a human being there anymore. I don't know what's happened to them. But if you ask me what we're fighting, it's evil. And because we're fighting evil, you've got to go to the other side. You've got to go to that spiritual sense. So I'm just going to end tonight, if I may, by saying, over the Christmas period, try some peace and quiet. No radio, no TV. Just somewhere, just sitting quietly. And it's amazing what can come into your head. So we want to beat this thing. We've got to regain spirituality, not the same as religion, and the right spirituality.
Yeah, you can talk about so many issues. I like any of us could do it. David Icke can string it out for 9 hours because there's plenty of stuff to talk about. But again, everything at the end of the day, if you feel like you have an external enemy, or you have a mission to deal with this external enemy, I think all of us can agree, definitely me personally, the battle was inside myself from the beginning, and it's still today the same. I am battling things inside myself to try to crystallize myself in the best way I can, develop myself, get rid of, not be afraid of the things that I was once afraid of. And that's really what the battle is for everybody. If everybody does that collectively, I think, you can transform society in a huge way. That's actually what's going on right now in front of our eyes. And that's something that is very exciting, but very daunting at the same time. But that's my 2 cents.
As Shakespeare all too rightly said, all the world is a stage, and basically we have one fraud after another perpetrated on us in order to maintain control. In order to control people, you have to be able to control information, and you have to divide them. They've lost control with the internet. Had a stupid move or not, I don't know, but that's a huge problem for them. But the greatest con of all, in my opinion, is in line with the whole the world is upside down thing. The greatest con of all was the idea that they impregnated us with, that happiness in some way is connected to how much you can accumulate or how much you can gain. It's exactly the opposite. My blessings in life, and I'm a rich man in terms of what life is really all about, extremely rich, but financially, I need to get 10 quid to get my ticket travel card back. And ultimately, the key to happiness, and I've lived it, I've experienced it. If I die tomorrow, no need to feel sorry for me, man. I lived a good life. Is that whatever you give, it comes back to you. What you give, your happiness is directly contingent upon what you can give. So if you're giving already, well, you're on the right track, but give even more. And I don't mean financially, whatever. Some people have finances, some people have wisdom, some people have organizational skills, whatever. Everyone has something. Give more. Make sure you do that, and you will be a happier person, and the world will be a better place.
Everyone said everything I was going to say, so I'll keep it simple. Fear is the thing you're fighting against, right? And your imagination. Your imagination is a big problem because your imagination tells you that you're going to get kidnapped, you're going to be put into a bin liner, you're going to be flown to a prison all around the world if you speak up and out these people. Well, that's not true. I've done it plenty of times and nothing's happened to me, right? It just simply is the truth, yeah? These people are afraid of us finding out. They're afraid of you revealing information. So stop complying. There's a really powerful word in the English language, and it's no. Yeah, just say no. That's it.
I'm just going to state the obvious. There's way more of us than there is of them. You know, no one of us can do very much on our own, but collectively, we are incredibly powerful. And I actually believe that these guys are running very, very scared of us right now. And so, you know, the ball is in our court. It's absolutely down to us how we play this. The only question, unfortunately, is how much pain and grief we've got to endure before we come up the other side. So the faster that we can spread the word and raise the awareness, then the less the pain, the less the grief, and the quicker we can get on with the rebuilding. But I'm an optimist. We're going to come through this, and we'll probably hook up in about a year's time and go, what a fucking ride that was. Thank you. Thanks for home. Thank you. Thanks, my friend. It's a real pleasure. Wonderful stuff. I'll catch you in a minute. You know, we'll give you a fair home, of course. God damn. Oh, careful, careful, careful. Yeah, it's up. Go to the end, turn right, and up the stairs. It's on the next floor. You're not rushing off here, are you? No.